It's amazing you talk about trends. I sort of joke or lament about the fact that the one question private sector, and I imagine you and others, ask and answer, even if you're not literally asking yourself and answering this, is that question: what world am I living in? What are the trends that define the world I'm living in? That is not a frame, that is not a question that is ever asked in a political context. I mean, the tribal nature of politics, particularly when you move away from the local level and get to the state and certainly the federal level, is how can you find a bigger crowbar to put in the spokes of the wheel of the other party to trip them up to win the news cycle. I mean, literally, it defines the focus. I mean, someone said the other day, and it's absolutely true, maybe it was David Gregory on Meet the Press, that made the point. He said, budget deal in Washington is pretty easy. What's difficult is coming up with a political frame so you can actually win the argument politically. So the actual work is not that complex, but the politics gets in the way of it. So this notion of failing forward fast, this notion, this sort of entrepreneurial notion that exists with vibrancy in the private sector is anathema to the way we operate in the public sector. We're risk adverse. We're scared to death of tomorrow's headlines. We don't say publicly what we commit to or say privately. We look at those trend lines and try to anticipate where people will be, but we're very cautious in terms of where they are. And that's not necessarily a secret formula for success for the rest of us in the real world.
It's almost that too big to fail, notion. I had the pleasure to speak with Mark Andreessen today, and he was talking about, I told him that I was going to be on this panel.
Yes.
And he was talking about the, sort of bank regulations as an example of exactly where layers upon regulations inhibit innovation, because, the big banks, when they had to get bailed out, we're all sort of in the public saying, oh, this is horrible, and in the back room we're going, awesome, there's these layers of regulations that sit between us and anybody that could come disrupt our industry. And I think that's where, innovation and technology, and just especially disruptive technology, is very threatening, and it shouldn't be, because that's sort of how we move forward. And at Eventbrite, we always think about this notion of, as we build our team, we never stop evolving, and it's that relentless pursuit of evolution that drives what we do as a technology company. And I think that's certainly devoid, and we're just like going on and on.
I actually love that.
Good, yeah.
No, it's great. No, I was just thinking about the duplicitous nature of these large corporations, and then obviously there's a lot of people here who probably have small businesses and want to, achieve success, but they're being hindered because they can't, and there's so many roadblocks. What do you think are resources or ways that they can actually move? I mean, we look at, okay, this is happening, but how do you move to the next step, to the next level?
I think it sort of takes the dreamer mentality. So when I think about regulations and compliance and all of, so there's this interesting notion that like software eats the world, right? And what's next? And it's actually software disrupting these industries that seem, completely ironclad, or just you cannot penetrate them. And one good example, and it may seem like a plug, but my husband Kevin Hartz founded a company called Zoom prior to Eventbrite here in San Francisco, and they were building upon the PayPal API to go after international money remittance. And it was post 9/11, it was online money transfer, it was basically the worst idea ever, right? And Sequoia Capital was like, you guys are nuts, and we kind of love that, so we're going to give you money, and then we're going to get more people to give you more money, because, by the way, it takes a lot of money to get over those hurdles. And I'll never forget this scrappy team of 20 engineers sitting in a room figuring out how to break down these barriers and how to get past the regulation. And in essence, their relentlessness actually built up barriers behind them, because now nobody's really taking on Western Union. That's the worst idea ever. And yet Zoom did, and they're there, right? And they're on the cusp of something really great. But it took years and patience and that dreamer mentality to get there. I mean, against all odds, quite literally.